Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome. Hey, Chloe.
Hi.
Welcome to the third Talk by Heart ever. We're kind of becoming pros, but not quite.
I'm not sure about pros.
It felt seamless to me.
Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you. So thank you so much for joining us today, guys. We have this month been exploring nourishment and how we stay nourished and asking you guys what nourishes you. And this month we are speaking with the amazing Chloe-Rose Crabtree, who's a chef, writer, and historian. Historian, and she focuses her work on food and identity. So we are so hyped to talk to you today and find out a bit about like your rituals, like how you nourish yourself and just look after yourself and manage to stay amazing to do what you've got to do in the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you guys about this as well.
Awesome.
It's a big thing. Like I think nourishment is something that's huge when we kind of think about our wellness and our well-being. It's something that gets sort of sidelined into just food when food can be so much more than just what you eat.
Yeah, 100%.
It's foundational. It's basically, in a way, what most of our well-being is built on top of. Like, if we're not nourished, we can't function.
Yeah.
Places we can find Chloe.
Places you can find Chloe. I mean, here, obviously, today, but apart from here, where can you find Chloe? So find her on Insta, Honey Pie Baking. You can find her at Source Journeys. You can also find her at www.sourcejourneys.com. Oh my gosh, you're doing so much wonderful stuff with Source Journeys, you and Anna, and we want to talk about that absolutely a bit later because totally geeking out over it.
That's what we want. That's our goal.
Yes, it's working. It's absolutely working. So yeah, please go and show Chloe and Anna some love on Source Journeys. Go and show Chloe some love on at Honey Pie Baking. Go and show us some love at wearewildwithin.com or at wearewildwithin on Insta. We'd love and appreciate you for that. And if you're watching on the replay, please comment below and let us know what your takeaways from today have been, or like what kind of golden nuggets have jumped out at you, because we always want to know. So don't be shy. But really what we want to start with first, the most important part of today is delving into the magic, is we'd love to know, Chloe, how you got into your work, like what drew you to your current work and how that all came together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of like one of these, which
are all the best ones.
yeah. I basically, I never set out to have 3 careers in one. I don't think most people do, but it's worked out really well for me to be able to sort of balance like my academic end where I do food research, the creativeness of cooking in a kitchen, and then also just like to be able to share things that I've learned through my research and my work in kitchens through my writing. But it really started, like I've always cooked with my family. My family's super big on family meals. It's how we communicate our love to one another. And my grandmother at a certain point, I don't really know when it happened, but I became in charge of desserts. And so like Thanksgiving, it was like pies, and I was like convinced I had to make the best pie crust, and that's why my handle is Honey Pie Baking, because it comes from a catering business I had back in Los Angeles, where I would do custom orders. But then at some point I realized working in kitchens was like 6 years into working in kitchens, and I was really, really burnt out physically. I knew I wanted to know more about food and how we interacted with it based on my own family's experience. And there was a regular that came in to the cafe that I used to work at who was a food historian. And so I got to talking to him about his work. He sort of helped me navigate what it would look like to apply to a graduate program. And then in 2015, I was admitted to, or maybe it was 2016, I was admitted to the the history and literature program through Columbia University in Paris, where I studied cookbooks as literature, domestic literature that taught people how to live their lives in the modern era. So I look a lot at like ladies' magazines. A lot of the stuff I read was directed towards young mothers who were trying to figure out how to raise a perfect American family. But while my research is focused on the US, you see similarities across different nations as nationalism sort of takes hold in countries. Food is such a great communicator on the personal level of who you are, where you come from, and how you care for yourself. And then I did a stint as a journalist with a travel company called Culture Trip, where I was their history editor. Decided I want to go back into kitchens, and then ever since I've sort of toggled between two careers. So right now I'm at a cafe called Bake Street in North London, where we do a lot of fun kind of looking into the history of different dishes, or kind of like we'll do a twist on a classic. So like I'm doing creme brulee cookies. It's just like it's fun. It's just fun food, and it feels really, really great to be able to sort of stretch that muscle and just enjoy the things that I'm giving people to eat.
I have a lot of those screenshots on my phone, by the way, in my gallery of your creme brulee cookies. Like seriously, that I've been sending to people.
For me, it's like tacos.
Oh God,
yeah, we're doing tacos as well. Yeah, that is. It's like one of the things I never really had to make back in Los Angeles was tortillas, but moving away from a city where you have Mexican markets all over, now I was like, I'm not really liking these frozen ones you can get in the shop. So I started making them, and then at the cafe, we've been making them for the weekends, and it's been really, really nice to like perfect the recipe and like be able to make a good tortilla on demand.
Cannot wait to come and eat, like for real.
We're coming to chow down. That's happening.
Yes. Order the whole menu.
Quick question: what are some of the interesting things that you found out in your studies? Like what kind of?
Like, were there any standout things that you were like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, or I was expecting that, and it's
definitely. I mean, I went into the program really thinking, this is with my Los Angeles brain, that, surrounded by wellness people, surrounded by people sort of like indoctrinated in diet culture, and the idea that if you eat the right way, basically you'll live forever. That's what I realized. The whole ethos is it's just cheating death through not enjoying your food.
That's basically the wellness industry.
That is the
pill and you'll be fine. You'll cheat death. Eat
do all these things. Do all these things. Work out like this. Eat this way. Do these things in your routine, and you'll stay youthful forever. Or you'll be ever forever lasting, right?
The goal is to never change at any point in time, and it just doesn't reflect what human life is like. And so going into this, I was looking at, why does the US have such bad eating habits? And I thought what I was going to find is there was some like untapped sort of knowledge that we were disregarding. And then what I found was that there was like an active movement to change the way people ate and push them towards processed foods, because they wanted to standardize what an American diet was to fit a standardized dietary sort of model that was created out of nutritional science in the 19th century. And around that time as well, you have a lot of really problematic science studies that are basically prioritizing a white body as the pinnacle of health over anyone else. And it's a white male body. So like even women weren't really, really studied because it was, and it's not because it was taboo to research them. It's just a lot of scientists didn't really see the point. What they wanted to do is create healthy bodies to be healthy workers to fit into the capitalist cog machine. So what I saw was any group that was marginalized, any kind of eating habit they had was immediately seen as unhealthy. It was written about in these ladies' magazines as a sign that parents weren't caring for their children. In New York, I believe it was the 1910s, 1920s, where there was a malnutrition scare, but conveniently, that scare only happened in Italian neighborhoods where the diet of the children didn't fit the normal diet of a wealthy middle class or middle class white family. And there's pictures of the children who are malnourished and they look completely fine. It's just, it's just they thought that because they were having brown bread instead of white bread, or they were having, you know, certain types of cuts of meats, or their dishes, for some reason, 19th century food scientists really didn't like it when food touched. They thought it would,
Wow.
they thought it would like ruin the nutritional value of the food, or you would digest it wrong. And there's all these talks about like having dyspepsia and all these, you know, different issues with digestion. The reality was they were just eating a lot of starch and like no vegetables with really any substance. And so it's just, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a ramble, but it was really interesting for me to walk away from it, realizing it's not so much that there's this lost information that we haven't used. It's that we've actively, I call it, you know, like any kind of major government has actively tried to rewrite the way people eat in order to standardize it and make it efficient so that we can shop in things like supermarkets and we can streamline an urban sort of environment.
It's crazy. Like when you dig backwards and you hear it like that, I mean, in some ways it's not surprising, but in other ways I just find that it's bonkers, you know, that then so much has been built on top of that. And until you really, really know what's going on, you potentially may not be making like autonomous choices. You know, you're making choices that you think are autonomous, but actually how much of it has been mapped out for you before you arrived, and you know what actually is nourishing to you, you know, what do you actually need, and how much of that is reflected in society and kind of held in value in society. And I guess it makes me question as well, like how you navigate your industry as you, like how do you do that, and in a space, I guess, because you've done all this research around food and you know how it's linked to identity and how it's linked to governments shaping kind of their version of the model society for their capitalist needs. And how do you not fit into it, but how do you feel
rebel against
I mean, after the pandemic and restaurants, like, you know, I at the beginning of the pandemic, I was working for a restaurant in Borough Market called May May with a chef called Elizabeth Haig. And her project is she's trying to bring Singaporean food to the UK in a way that is recognizable to her as someone who is grown up around it. And that was super, super cool. But I realized as the pandemic was going, like I was having a really hard time working in a restaurant because I was seeing how difficult it was to be able to do something like that and still make money. And because you're doing a lot of legwork to educate the public about what type of food you're selling. I mean, we had so many people who would come up to the stand and ask if we were like serving pad thai, just because it was, you know, we were Asian women selling food. Well, you can get that there's a Thai place where you can get that, and it's lovely, it's very good, but that's not what we specialize in. And explaining to people that like one type of food doesn't really represent the monolith. Like it doesn't represent a bunch of different ethnicities or cultures. Like even within Singapore, there's multiple different food traditions. So we were specifically creating a kopitiam that served Hainanese chicken rice. And this is a very, very specific remit that we were trying to get across to people. So that's why, like, I found that really restricting sometimes in terms of what you were able to create creatively. And also because the market is trying to serve as like a center where people can go and try foods from so many different places, you know, it's a tourist center. They also restrict what you can put on the menu just because they want to make sure that there's a representation that fits certain things. They have, you know, a certain number of salads and a certain number of, they don't want to stand selling the same type of beef curry, even though it's two different ways of making that beef curry because it confuses the customer. So I kind of came out of working at a restaurant that was doing something quite commercial and thinking, I don't know if this is how I want restaurants to operate. I don't know if I think food should be a commercial enterprise, but at the same time, it's how a lot of people make their living. So it's very conflicting, you know, with me, with what I do to make it work for me is I make sure that I find projects that I really believe in. So like working with Liz was great. I was able to learn a lot. I was able to try and communicate that learning to the customers as well. And for the most part, they're receptive. I would say when you work in hospitality, you get 80% wonderful people, 20% not so great people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're the people you remember at the end of the day. But on the whole, it's really wonderful to create a space that people can come in and they feel like they've had an experience. And I think that is worth continuing to have in society. But I think we just need to rework what we think about in terms of our power dynamic when we walk into a restaurant. Are we walking in as a guest, or are we walking in as somebody who is demanding something because we have money to pay for it? You know, like the work behind the kitchen is usually ignored because it's the way hospitality is built up is you're not meant to be seen. You're meant to serve, which is interesting to experience. But, you know, I think there's a lot of people who are really trying to rework the way we interact with hospitality, and hopefully it sticks. Hopefully people have realized how wonderful it is to have local places open up again and will engage with everywhere.
So exciting. I feel like definitely not just with after the pandemic, but there's been a slow kind of move to just changing the way we do everything.
Yeah.
And being a bit more conscious and mindful of how we consume and interact. Not just with everything. With everything. Yeah. So yeah, everything's
slow. You have to take a little bit longer, and like, you know, you have to wait outside a shop now where you could just go in and run out, and it's okay.
Yeah.
With your so you haven't told us your heritage, but you have a mixed heritage, right?
Yeah, I guess I kind of glossed over that bit in terms of why I went into my research. But my family has Mexican and Chinese heritage, and I am a product of multiple generations of assimilations of those cultures. So what I found really interesting is my family still, even though we didn't necessarily speak Spanish or Mandarin, we would still hold to certain food traditions in the house. And it was very much a part of the way my family said, you know, this is who you are. And this is where we come from. These are my memories of this type of food. That happened mainly with Mexican food because it's a long story, but basically like the connection between the Chinese side of my family was severed quite early on. And my great-great-grandmother grew up in a white family as a companion to their daughter. And so like she got an education from that, and she definitely benefited from her proximity to all of that. But it is something, looking back, understanding where I sort of fit in the rest of the world, it's a bit confusing to navigate. And it's a great way for me to understand how food traditions can endure in the face of assimilation. And it was really great. Like this, a couple of weeks ago, I'm doing an interview series on Sourced, my food research project with Dr. Sulan Masing, where I'm talking to chefs in London about cooking their heritage food, what it means. And the chef, Toya, who does Filipino food, he had a similar experience where in his growing up, he was kind of pushed to be more Australian, despite being born in the Philippines, and realized as an adult that he had missed this connection, but he still had this nostalgia for his mom's food. So that became and having those conversations about what it meant to be Filipino. For me, it's what does it mean to be from Los Angeles and to carry all these heritages inside of me, and you know, make sure that we celebrate the differences that we have around us instead of trying to limit the way they express themselves.
Yes. Can we go? That's coming out as a quote immediately. But yeah, it really resonates because I feel the same. I really feel that, you know, both our heritage is, well, I'll let you speak for yourself. But, you know, my heritage is Ghanaian. Both my parents migrated to England in their 20s. They met here. They're both from Ghana, but they're from different groups. My mum is Ga, my dad is Ashanti. They eat some of the same food, they eat some different food, you know, they speak different languages. And, you know, I'm definitely a product of Britain, of England, and of Ghana, you know, even though I wasn't born there. There's so much wrapped up in the way we eat, in the food, you know, the same thing, the food.
Subtle differences.
Yes,
in each region.
Yes, subtle differences in each region. And my parents both spoke to me in their languages, but actually we spoke back in English, and they never kind of directed us to speak back in Ga or Tree. So it's, there's more than one way of kind of keeping, the heritage and the identity going. And I find it always really interesting. I love what you said about how can we basically make space to expand into all the facets of who we are, via identity and our food, and how can we carry all of that expansively rather than trying to mold it into some idea of what it should look like.
Yeah, for sure. It's the flip side of understanding what different types of food are is also seeing how in food media they flattened certain cuisines. So like in London, everyone's super excited about tacos, but there's different regional tacos even in Mexico. So you have to, in understanding food and celebrating the differences within it, it's understanding that there is no one form of authenticity either. And that's the thing that I've talked to a lot of chefs about who cook their heritage foods, is that this idea of what is authentic can be so limiting when what you're doing is you're expressing your personal experience of it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be different than somebody else's, no matter what. It's never going to be the same.
For sure. I got a sense of that on one of your Source Journey talks with the couple that does the Mexican food. They do the flour tortillas instead of the corn. And like everyone expects corn, but flour is not indigenous, but that's what some regions are used to, and that's what they make. So yeah,
exactly. And it's a sign of a established culture adapting to a colonizing force coming in, using the ingredients that are around and sort of creating this new culture out of it. And that is completely valid as an expression of your culture, and that's why it's really great to see as well that in Los Angeles, I've noticed, and haven't been back for a few years, obviously, because we can't really travel, but I've noticed that there's a new generation of chefs that are coming up that are they're expressing their personal identity, but also the Los Angeles identity of being surrounded by all of these different foods and having access to amazing ingredients. Like, it's incredible to watch and see the way that the sort of food industry is changing there. And it's happening in the UK as well. It's just, for me, I have this sort of idea of what it was when I left in Los Angeles. And you can see that in high relief, whereas here in London, we're kind of in it, so you don't really see it happening as drastically, but it is happening, and it's nice. I think the more we push people to understand that fusion doesn't necessarily mean you're just smashing ingredients together. You're also exploring what it means to cook maybe a specific dish, but with a different technology, and you can come up with a similar result, or it adds a little something. You just basically you have to explain why you're doing what you're doing, and that's never a bad thing.
Apart from food and your work, what else nourishes you? Like, what makes you feel good, and what lifts you?
I mean, the sun. I've been in the best mood the last couple of weeks. I run out of the kitchen and I'm like, it's sun, and it's light so late. It's amazing. I find winter really tough, but what gets me through it is that I also have an amazing network of people around me here in London, and my family's always available for a phone call when I want to talk to them and feel that, like I'm at home again. Really, it's been the people around me and having such a great support network. Like my partner, he has really made it possible for me to career hop and then muddle together a career, and now he's moving on to his new job that is what he wants to do. And it just it's so, we were talking about this today, and it's just so nice to see how we've been able to work as a team together and also have our friends around us see it as well. And just, I don't know, it's just nice to know that you're not the only one who's in charge of yourself. You have other people that you can turn to when you need to, and that is really what nourishes me, is building that network around me and being sure that I'm there for the people I love as well.
That's really beautiful. And just sometimes we forget that sometimes our communities or families that we build for ourselves and around ourselves can really help nourish us and be there for us in times of pain, joy, everything. So That's really beautiful to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, the way I express it, obviously, is feeding them constantly.
Of course.
But yeah, it's really like, you just know the people who you bring into your life. Everyone kind of brings something to the table, and it all kind of becomes this balance that you find yourself living in a way that I think is really, really wonderful.
I think it's also really beautiful what you said about kind of, you know, this idea of other people kind of holding you and supporting you and being able to, you not kind of being standalone, and the ebb and flow of you and your partner to enable you to carve out, you know, your career, and to do it in a way that's supported and not like, okay, well, you want to do that. Oh, okay, well, that's going to mean this, you know. It's like, I think it's really rare that you find that kind of dynamic in relationship, in any kind of relationship. So yeah, when you have that, whether that's via your partner or, you know, via your family or via your besties, it's like you just grab it and hold on to it and nurture it, right?
Yeah, I think it definitely doesn't have to be a romantic partner. It can be anyone in your life. It's just knowing that you have support is massive. Yeah, and I mean, that's why I work collaboratively in most of my projects. Like Anna and I, we started Sourced because we were like, we know we can fill in the gaps where the other person can't, and it won't be this kind of like, I did this and you didn't do this. Like today we sent out our newsletter and we were in the Google Doc at the same time, you know, like putting things in, and sort of there was a chat going on the side that one of us could see but the other one couldn't, so we had to text as well. But you know, just this knowing that you're not alone, and especially in our work lives, I think we tend to silo ourselves into this idea of like, I have to get this amount of work done so that my bosses see that I'm doing the work and I'm doing okay. And it's actually like, you know, if we work as a team and we understand that we don't have to be on our own, then so much better work gets done. So many better ideas are come up with, and it's yeah, you guys understand.
Very true. I was just thinking, that's exactly the same with us, right?
Yeah, for real.
We're almost coming to the end of the 30 minutes, which I don't understand how. It always comes too fast. It always comes too fast, I know. And there's still so many things we want to ask. So just choosing.
How do you stay in your power? Like, how do you stay in your power and ultimately stay wild within? And when we say wild within, we mean like, wild within just means you being your authentic self and not being afraid to show that and do things kind of your way. So how do you stay wild within, and how does that radiate to the mark that you want to leave in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like letting myself be uncomfortable. Like today, this interview, it isn't something I'm normally used to, but I was like, it sounds fun. You guys are great. It's like a safe environment. I can be myself. But yeah, like letting yourself be uncomfortable, and then realizing like you can do the things that you thought you couldn't. You know, not uncomfortable where you're like, I think this is going to make me get hurt. But if there's like a moment where you're like, I don't know, like, why would someone want to talk to me? Well, they've already reached out. Like, why don't you just go for it? You know, it's not, you don't win anything by closing yourself off. And actually, I had a friend who said to me once, like, I just try and say yes to more things than I say no to. And that really stuck with me. And not yes because you have problems telling people no. Like that is also a really good thing to have, and something that I've had to learn. But that's when you find out in yourself and just deciding like, I'm going to go for it. And that really, not only does it make me feel really strong that I'm able to sort of push myself, but also like, it's a really great way to stop and like check, you know, where you set your comfort levels and understand that you don't want to stagnate. You have to keep moving. Otherwise, you know, what is just sitting here, like, that's not nourishing, just sort of sitting in one spot, not realizing that you're growing and you can grow. And it's like, that's just such a huge part of being, you know, a better person, and getting other people to sort of have confidence in themselves as well, as being honest when you aren't comfortable, and letting them know, like, I don't do this every day, but like if I can, maybe you can too.
Yeah, love that.
Amazing, and I love that.
So inspiring as well, so real.
Sometimes, just saying and pushing through and just evolving. It's part of our evolution. It helps us. So Oh, Chloe.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely amazing. Like, there's just tons to still talk to you about, but I'm sure we will.
Yeah, we'll do tacos when you come and visit.
Yeah, exactly. When we come visit, for sure, that will happen.
Oh, thank you so much. And we will definitely be catching up. I hope you guys enjoyed our session today. And we will see you again next month.
Lots of love.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And good food.